The American flag. We all know the story of who made the first one well. At least we think we do. The story of Betsy Ross making the first flag has been universally told and accepted in the United States for nearly 2 decades. But recently, historians have begun to question the age-old tale. Ultimately, you can decide for yourself what you believe. But before you do, let's discuss reasons for and against it being Betsy Ross that made the first American flag, and how she has been surrounded in controversy nearly 200 years after her death. I'm your host, Rachel Payton, and you're listening to the Chronicles of Time. Let's dive into Betsy Ross. First, let's start with getting to know a little bit about Betsy Ross herself. She was born Elizabeth Griscom on January 1st, 1752. Her family was of the Quaker religion, and she was the eighth of 17 children. Yes, I said 17. She grew up in Pennsylvania and would receive Quaker schooling. Once she finished school, she would study as an apprentice at an upholstery shop. While she was there, she became very talented. Upholsterers weren't necessarily the same as they are today. They did much more than furniture in the 1700s. Rugs, tablecloths, flags, bed covers, curtains, quite literally almost anything. While learning, her and another apprentice by the name of John Ross became infatuated with one another. Soon, infatuation turned to love, and the two got serious. Only there was one problem. John wasn't of the Quaker faith. He was of the Christ Church, so Betsy's family didn't approve of their relationship. This could have been trouble in paradise for the couple, but instead, at the age of 21, Betsy chose to elope with John in New Jersey. This upset her family and left them with an estranged relationship. But happy with her decision, her and John started their new life together. They would open their own upholstery shop in Philadelphia, and it was even said that they sat a few pews down from George Washington and even made orders for him. After 3 short years of marriage, John died and Betsy was left a young widow. But being the hashtag woman boss she was, she kept their upholstery shop open. During the Revolution, she would make equipment and uniforms for the Continental Army. But this is where historians begin to debate. In 1870, Betsy's grandson, William Canby, told this story in a speech given at the Historical Society of Pennsylvania. He claimed that his grandmother was visited by George Washington and 2 other members of the Continental Congress in the summer of 1776. The 3 men came to her upholstery shop with a rough draft of a flag. Washington wanted a new flag to represent a new nation. The flag they presented had 13 red and white stripes and 13 pointed stars on blue. The stars on the draft had 6 points, but Betsy suggested they make them 5 points instead because it was easier to cut. The colors were chosen for specific reasons. The red signifies valor, the white purity, and the blue perseverance. The stars being in a circle signify that no one colony was superior to another. Betsy would complete the flag shortly after the meeting. She would go on to marry a merchant sailor by the name of Joseph Ashburn in 1777. This marriage was also short-lived because he died just 5 years later in 1782 after being captured prisoner by the British. One of his fellow prisoners, by the name of John Claypool, visited Betsy to inform her of her husband's passing. And scandalously, she married Claypool. Yes, the same guy who just informed her of her last husband's passing. She has better luck with this marriage, though, because it lasted 34 years and they had 5 children together. He would still go on to pass away before Betsy. But Betsy continued doing upholstery, and she and one of her daughters would make an 18-foot by 24-foot American flag to send to New Orleans before the War of 1812. She would retire at the age of 76 and moved in with one of her daughters. She would tell the story of how she made the first American flag to her children and grandchildren, and she would pass away peacefully in her sleep on January 30th, 1836, at the age of 84. Okay, now we need to discuss some things. Over the years, There have been doubts about the events said by Canby, Betsy's grandson. First, it was almost a decade later when he told the story. And secondly, the Continental Congress kept minutes on virtually everything, but there is no documentation or proof mentioning Betsy Ross and the flag in their minutes. But William Canby had other relatives from the Ross family sign legal documents verifying the truth of the story. Some historians don't even think that the stars were even aligned in a circle. Instead, they believe the stars were more sporadically placed and many different variations were used. But if Betsy Ross didn't make the flag, then who did? Well, some historians believe that Francis Hopkinson, a New Jersey delegate and signer of the Declaration, designed it. Hopkinson sought out payment for the flag of the United States of America in 1780, but his petition was denied because he was not the only one consulted. So, in the end, we may never truly know who created the first flag. But today, Betsy Ross is generally accepted as the icon and creator of the American flag. She was even on a 1952 postal stamp celebrating her 200th birthday. Her house in Philadelphia is now a museum honoring her life. But inside, it wants guests to decide if they believe this to be historical fact or well-loved fiction. And why has Betsy Ross become so controversial over 200 years later? Well, in 2019 for Independence Day, Nike launched a pair of sneakers featuring the Betsy Ross 13-star flag on them. Colin Kaepernick, who was endorsed by Nike, brought up the issue of these shoes and how they were offensive due to the flag representing an era when slavery was widespread. Nike then pulled the shoes from launching. But it's truly up to you to decide who you believe created the first American flag, because we may never know a definitive answer. The only thing we know for sure is that we in fact don't know anything. But nevertheless, thank you for listening to my episode over Betsy Ross. I hope your 2023 Flag Day was absolutely fantastic, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you enjoyed, please leave me a rating and review and tell your pals to listen too. New episodes are uploaded every Wednesday. I'm your host, Rachel Payton, and thank you for listening to the Chronicles of Time.